Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Severe MMA podcast preview show. Or just Severe MMA preview show. I'm delighted to be joined today by two of the top guys covering the sport in the world right now. Spencer Kite all the way over in Canada and Paul Brown all the way up in Lindsay. I was going to say Dublin. Are you Dublin or are you in Meath now? But you're in Dublin, are you?
I'm from Meath. I'm in Dublin, though. I've been in Dublin for years and years.
Terrible. Well, what's not terrible is the card this weekend. Some people, I was talking to Graham at the weekend. He's like, "Oh, it's very top heavy, not a great card." But I love this card. I think it's absolutely brilliant card. Okay, it's top heavy in terms of like it has one great fight and maybe not 2, 3, or 4 or a couple of different title fights. But I'm pretty happy with the strength of this card. Now, maybe I have just been Stockholm syndromed by the UFC over the last few years, and they throw any slap at me and I'll take it. But I don't think so. I do like this an awful lot. Let's get straight to the main event because I feel like we're going to spend a good long bit of time talking about it. And I want to talk about like the technical side of it first, and then we'll talk about all the rest of it, because I feel like that's the part of it maybe isn't talked about as much in this fight, and it seems to be a lot in other fights. I watched back Chimaev versus Usman today, and I watched back Duplessis against Strickland and a couple of other bits of fights as well. And I'll be honest, I'm very intrigued. I'm going to throw it over to you first of all, Paul. I've watched back some of those fights and haven't done the analysis on this. Where do you stand in terms of what Dricus can do versus Chimaev? In terms of, we know the fact that he stays in there, he has an unbelievable chin, unbelievable cardio, keeps going for days, and is just a really varied fighter. Whereas Chimaev, he's a blistering madman coming out of the gap. But can he continue? Even the second round against Usman, it wasn't really there. And the third round, he kind of got a takedown late. That took it for him. But is this a must dominate fight for Chimaev? And what I mean by that is, if this goes to 3, 4, 5, are we looking at a shock maybe on our hands here? And are we looking at Duplessis taking down Chimaev for the first time ever?
Yeah, I mean, you could quite conceivably see that. What we've seen so far out of Chimaev has been 85% of the time he goes in there and he just demolishes people in the opening round, and obviously it's been very, very, very impressive. He may well do that this Saturday night. I think there's quite a high possibility that he does that. He's going to have the chance to do that, but it's difficult to know. He brings this pace that just cuts guys in half and just drains their gas tanks, breaks their hearts. He really, really does, and it's quite relentless. But the big question, I mean, it's there for everybody. You ask anybody, any fighter, anybody involved in the sport over the last couple of months, how do you see this fight is going? And Spencer's a guy, you'll know this, Spencer, you're interviewing fighters left, right, center. Anytime you're interviewing a middleweight, we always ask them, don't we? How do you see this title fight going? Well, look, if he can get through that first round, if he can get there, then the fight changes completely. But Jesus, that's the biggest if I think I've ever seen in mixed martial arts coming into this weekend, because having watched them back, and in particular for me, having looked back at what Dricus du Plessis has done in the last couple of years, I'm just going to pull it up here in front of me here so that I get the order right. But the guys he's been looking brilliant against and fighting against, some really good guys, not one of them would even think about shooting a takedown on you. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's fought Sean Strickland twice. He's fought Israel Adesanya in between that. The last time somebody shot a takedown on him was Robert Whittaker back in 2023, and Robert Whittaker took him down relatively easily. So I think it's a really big if. Do you know what I mean? It's what Chimaev does is he shoots it from the dressing room, really. And he really is the best in the sport at doing that, because this is the type of thing you tell people not to do. Set it up. You got to use some feints, use some shots to disguise it. He doesn't care about any of that. Now, the problem with him is that if he does not get that, and we saw it against Usman, I'll talk about the Usman first round in a moment, but we saw it later in the fight where they were fairly laborious. The thing that really made me kind of change my pick today, when I was leaning heavily towards the DDP. I watched back that first round of the Usman fight. He took down Usman really easily, and would have finished most guys, but Usman just, I don't know how he made it through that first round. So this kind of worries me. It worries me for DDP. I don't think, while he's a bull of a man and he has a great engine, ever since he got the old nose fixed and he's not 8% oxygen DDP anymore, I do just worry for him. Can he withstand that first round? I'm very concerned for him. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Spencer, what do you think? Like, there's a lot to break down in this fight, but I feel like that's the biggest first part. Can DDP survive the first round? Can Chimaev take him out in the first round?
Yeah, it's absolutely the question here. And I think for most of us, it feels like if it ends early, it's Chimaev. If it ends late, or if we get into 3, 4, 5, then it's probably going in favor of DDP because we've just seen him excel in those spaces. The thing that I'm stuck on and the thing that I'm trying to navigate is, does DDP go out here and just say, look, I'm going to get taken down? Like, it's just accept it, right? What I need to do when I get taken down is the important part. I need to make sure that I don't give him opportunities to get my back. I need to make sure that I'm defending well, that I'm covering up, that I'm not trying to waste a bunch of energy athleting my way out of these things, and just accept that, look, certainly make him work to get you there. Don't just concede the takedown in open space or anything like that. But if you get taken down, just accept that, hey, this is where we are. Let me protect myself. Let me keep myself safe. Let me make this guy work a little bit, spend some energy, so that as we get into the latter rounds, he's a little bit more tired. And Paul, you mentioned the Kamaru Usman fight, and yes, he certainly took him down, but that's Kamaru Usman coming off the couch and off 2 years of a layoff. And yep, round one was certainly Chimaev, and every round one in his career has been his favor. But then Kamaru Usman coming off the couch in a 2-year layoff gave him a pretty tough fight the rest of the way. And now we're talking about a guy in DDP that has shown us over these last 3 fights, which are all championship fights, in 3, 4, and 5, he's got the cardio, he's got the pace, he's got the output to keep coming at you. And so it always feels like such rudimentary analysis to say, well, if he can just get by, but it really feels so pivotal here. It feels so critical here. And so I want to see, and I've watched a little bit of the countdown, and of course you hear DDP and his coach saying, we're not going to shy away from the wrestling. We're going to take it to him. I don't know if that's necessarily the right approach, is to go at Chimaev and be like, hey, I want to wrestle too, because he's the better wrestler, hands down. But can he make him work? And can he make it so that those first couple rounds, if we get through them, are taxing on his conditioning? There is an interesting wrinkle. I talked to Eric Nixick for the coach conversation this week. He mentioned, and I don't know how much you guys are on social media, but Chimaev's been out in Orange County, California, training at the training lab with Coach Sam Calavita, who is an absolute lunatic mad scientist when it comes to helping athletes build their conditioning, improve their stamina, all of those things. Aaron Pico's out there. Armin Saryukin's out there. Of course, TJ Dillashaw famously was out there, and some of his guys. And I just wonder, and Nixick brought this point up of like, how much does that change things? Now, it's his first time being out there. You never know what kind of gains, how many gains somebody is making in that short of a period. But even just to go and work with Coach Cal for a little bit and be around that group of people where you're putting your body through that taxing that is designed specifically for what's ahead. I just wonder if maybe this is a fight where we see a little bit of an uptick in that cardio. And so instead of it being, if DDP can get through 2, it becomes he's got to get through 3. Because even then, if you lose the first 3, you need to come out and finish this guy.
I think the thing is, like, to just hark back to Usman for a second, and you make a good point. Like, look, he's still relatively young enough in his career, is Chimaev. Things could change. But, like, Usman didn't, and you're correct in what you said, Spencer, that it was a close round 2 and round 3. But Usman didn't exactly push the pace against him on the feet. You know, even at the whole way through the second and in the third before that, the takedown with about, what was it, maybe 2 minutes, 90 seconds left. So imagine we have the same fight here between DDP and Chimaev, but instead of Usman, we have DDP. He's going to push that pace. Now, DDP isn't, you know, he's not Marab or he's not fluffy or anything like that, but he just keeps working all the time. He reminds me a little bit of like the early days of Robert Whittaker, and especially when Whittaker, the early middleweight days, let's say, and when he fought Yoel Romero, just didn't allow Yoel to settle at any stage, and win 10 rounds without getting knocked out against Yoel at that time was scary. Like the way he switches stances and keeps like jabbing you from different angles at all times. Like if you have cardio issues, you're going to collapse under that sort of pressure, but not in the, you know, the Nick Diaz sense of pressure or the Marab sense of pressure or whatever it might be. I think that's a big part of it. And as you said as well, like, just looking at the stats here, Strickland 5 rounds, Adesanya 4 rounds, Strickland 5 rounds, DDP's last 3 fights. Chimaev has gone to a decision twice now. He's won both of those, absolutely, but his fights are first round fights. No matter how much he's worked in the card, you don't know until you hit that 4th round, that 20 minutes, that 23 minutes, that 5th round. And I predicted it a couple of times now, but this fight is draw written all over it. 10-8 first round, 10-9 second round, and then 3 10-9s for DDP in the last 3 rounds. Could it be? Maybe it could. But Spencer, I'll just throw it back to you here quickly for a second. Tell us, is there any drama around this fight? What's the story around the fight? You know, obviously you're a great man for writing up the stories and writing up the interviews and what people say. I pay attention to absolutely none of that. So what is there a big story around this fight? Is there any animosity or anything between these two lads?
I don't think there really is. I mean, Chimaev is one of those guys that has a lot to say about everyone always, no matter what. So like you go through everything, and again, watching the countdown show, he says, oh, look at the guys that Dricus has fought. Nobody's any good, essentially, right? It's just none of them are any good. Izzy's over the hill. Sean Strickland can't fight at all. It's just these guys. I'm the best. He's never faced anybody like me, which of course is going to get a guy like Dricus, who's competitive and respectful until you're not, to be like, look, he could say what he wants. I'm the guy with the belt. And I talked to him and I said, like, is it interesting to you? Is it funny to you that the narrative is that you basically have to prove yourself as the best against this guy that's coming in as the challenger? He said, no, that's how it always is with me. That's how I'm going to beat this guy and be the first to beat him. And whoever the next guy is, whether it's Nasruddin Imavov or Kyle Bahayo or RDR, that guy's going to be the guy that's going to come in, and that guy's going to beat me because I'm not very good. And it's just that, right? And it's not from a prove everybody else wrong that he's approaching this. It's not even from I want to shut Chimaev up. It's just, again, I want to affirm for myself, for my team, what we know. We've known this the whole way along, that I am the best in the world. And every time out, 9 for 9 in the UFC, he's proven that. And so to me, that's the overwhelming narrative here, is the underdog champion against the guy that we've been forecasting for 5 years to get to this point. But there's not, between them, there's not. I know you love Embedded, where they cross paths, and I think they met each other at the elevators today. And then, of course, we're asked about it at media day, and it doesn't seem like anything came of it, because why should there? They're just competitors. But that, to me, is the narrative here, is that we've got an underdog champion that has done everything in his power to convince people and show people that he's the best. But he's coming up against this guy that we sort of felt like is destined for greatness for the last 5 years.
And it's almost like, where does that graph meet? Like, because like, how underrated is Duplessis? Or is there a bit of like, maybe he's not untouchable as a champion? And then how untouchable is Chimaev? Maybe he could be beating him. We've talked bits and pieces about that. Where do you stand with that, Paul? And just another thing I'll throw it at you, and you can maybe put a bit of analysis in terms of the fight and outside of the fight into it. Someone asked me on the Q&A this week, who would the UFC prefer to win this fight, Chimaev or Duplessis? And I'm kind of thinking to myself, oh, definitely Chimaev. He's the bigger star and everything. But then the second part of the question was basically like, Chimaev doesn't fight that often. He struggles to get healthy. Can he? Where's this fight on? It's on in America, so I know he can get into America. Where we'll see on Saturday night anyway. But like, and Duplessis, I don't know, as to Spencer's point there, like, when he does say things, he is an interesting character. I think he's becoming one of those guys, a little bit like Volkanovski, and maybe it's from the part of the world he's in as well, especially in America. We saw with McGregor, a kind of a non-American voice always maybe stands out. Do you think this is kind of a win-win actually for the UFC? Because both of these guys are probably people who they don't mind as champions, really. But give us a breakdown of that, and how you think, second of all, how you think the fight will go, and who you think will emerge. And when they emerge, 4 questions here, will they be a star?
I think, yeah, absolutely. The UFC are in a really good position in terms of like, who would they want to win this? Because the easy analysis there is to say, look, it's Khamzat Chimaev, because, he's going to draw eyes, he's going to draw numbers. But your point about how often he fights and how frequently he fights really does play a big part here. Dricus du Plessis fights. He's an active champion. He's a champion from outside the traditional strongholds of the United States and Brazil and places like that. So, theoretically, if if they wanted to be in a position where they could kind of break new ground in Africa, they could. But it's not the type of thing the UFC do. But, you know, they do like selling merchandise. They do like selling TV rights deals and that kind of thing around the world. So obviously having champions in newer parts of the world, kind of it is beneficial to them. The thing with Dricus du Plessis is, if at the moment he is who he is, you know, he's beaten a couple of guys, but there's still questions over how good is this guy actually, because of the aesthetic nature of how he fights. You know, you look at how he fights and it shouldn't work, and people maybe analyze it that. I'm always reminded when I watch him or certain other guys, like we'll say Reinier de Ridder falls into this category. I'm reminded of I read a biography about Rocky Marciano, and I can't remember the name of his coach, but he had a great one-liner in it. It was like, all of these guys look great when they're doing all of these techniques, but none of them look that good when they're lying on the canvas. So it's about who's effective really at the end of the day, and Dricus du Plessis has been effective all the way through so far. I think he's at the point now where, from what I'm seeing, is most people are now picking him to win this fight this weekend, because everyone has picked against him over and over and over, and he's gone out and proven us all wrong. And then I'm looking in our Severe WhatsApp group, and everyone's going DDP to win this fight. So I'm like, okay, was that the time where he turns up there and the people who are in the know are picking him, but it doesn't work out in his favor? So it's really, really difficult to kind of, for me to just to settle on one. Like I was leaning in his favor until probably this morning, and then, as I said earlier, I'm swinging back now towards Khamzat. I'll probably wake up tomorrow swinging back towards DDP. But if he chalks off the name of Khamzat Chimaev on his lists of conquests, like, that does wonders for him, you know what I mean? And he comes out of there, and then the UFC have an active champion who has beaten the boogeyman. You know, he's beaten the bad guy, and then we're looking at who else is there, and that division, it's getting tasty out there. You know, we've got that UFC Paris main event coming, so whoever wins this weekend, there's a ready-made challenger there. And then we've got Reinier de Ridder and Fluffy Hernandez sticking their hand in the air. And will we see them fight each other? Will we see them fight Strickland and Adesanya? There's fights now that we all want to see in that division, and for years we didn't have that, and I'm just glad we do. But to answer one of the questions, I can't settle on who I think is going to win. But to answer the other one, I think the UFC definitely have a lot to gain if Dricus du Plessis wins this weekend.
Well, as a long-time fan of the middleweight division, Spencer will tell you.
I was just going to ask, how are you holding up now that middleweight is interesting and exciting, and how are you managing?
If you'll remember on the podcast the two of us did maybe a year ago, I did say the middleweight division was turning around. So look, credit to me for adjusting with the times. But look, I think Chimaev coming up to middleweight has really helped it, because, you know, it needed that. Whereas like Islam going up to welterweight, he doesn't really need it. We already have loads of guys. Now it'll be. I'm not that jazzed about that fight per se, but him as champion will be really cool if he. Which most people, I think, he will win. We move on after this. I'll get your pick, Spencer. I said I'm picking the draw. I'm picking Chimaev, though, if it's not a draw. I just do think, like, there is greatness in Chimaev. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Like, he's such an amazing fighter, and I don't know. I feel like we're at the stage of the year as well now. The Premier League season is about to start, and everyone's very positive about their teams, and we think good things can happen. And I'm kind of in that mindset at the moment. Give me about 3 weeks, and I'll be gone. But I don't know. I feel a bit like if we're picking du Plessis to win, we're a bit like, the guy who's kind of just the guy that tries harder is going to win, not the supreme athlete technician. So I don't know. What do you think, Spencer? Now, feel free to pick du Plessis after me setting that up there. But
I'm going to take the guy that tries harder. I'm going to take the guy that has the big gold belt over his shoulder, that has shown it to me in 5-round fights, that has shown it to me against the absolute best in the world the last couple of years. And that's not to take anything away from what Chimaev did against Rob Whittaker. That's not to take anything away from being 16-0. I think he is, as Dricus said when I talked to him, there's no question that this guy is an elite talent, that he has all of the skills, that he can be there. We just haven't quite seen it yet. And I know 100% what I'm getting from Dricus. I will not be surprised at all if Chimaev comes out and blows him out of the water and is screaming and yelling and foaming at the mouth after a 95-second thrashing to win the title. but I also will not be surprised. You said off the top, like, are we going to be shocked? I won't be shocked if Dricus wins this fight. We know sort of the path. We know what he's got to do. I won't be surprised if he gets there.
Let's talk about the co-main event, Aaron Pico against Lerone Murphy. I sent in my picks during the week to start off with the picks for this one, and I sent in Aaron Pico, and I think he'll win the decision. But when I look at Sherdog here, and I see that Aaron Pico has fought for 4 minutes and 53 seconds in the last 2 years, almost exactly, that sends big worries down my spine. I know, a lot of people have asked me in the Q&A over the last few months, like, is Pico going to be the next Patchy Mix, the next Pitbull that they get in there and they kind of freeze a little bit? Now they might be better in the second fight and things like that. My answer this week has been no, based on Aaron Pico's career to date, where he has basically been one of those guys who had a big setback early in his career, and a couple of them, and then has fought his way back, has had to kind of go to the wrestling and go to what maybe brought him to the dance before he adjusted and put his whole game together and became a well-rounded mixed martial artist. And then he, has beaten good guys over the last few years. Okay, the Jeremy Kennedy shoulder injury was in the middle of all of that, but we can discount that so much. And he's on a great run, apart from the fact that PFL bought out Bellator and he was only able to fight once in that run. Now, Lerone Murphy is a very, very good fighter as well. And I wonder, will the key to this, and I'll throw it over to you after this, lads, and to give me a judging talk for a second here. Like, Aaron Pico is a guy who's had 17 fights and 2 of them have gone to a decision. Lerone Murphy, at the other side of it, has had 16 fights as well, and 10 of them have gone to a decision. And he's won every single one. One draw, and he's won the other 9. I just wonder, is a guy with like Aaron Pico's athleticism and power and all-round ability going to separate himself a little bit more than almost everyone else Lerone Murphy has come up against? Because Lerone Murphy's usually the quicker, better athlete, stronger, faster, and all that. Is he against Aaron Pico? I don't think so. I think Aaron Pico is a super, super, super athlete. But is Aaron Pico going to be at his best? Paul, what do you think, as a guy who's covered both of these lads for a good while now? It's one of those fights. There's a lot of integers to decide this, like there is in many fights. But when a guy is out that long, how big of a part does it play? And not necessarily that he's been out that long. So he fought in February 2024, which is a good while out as well. And that, it was September 23 before that. It plays a big part coming into this, doesn't it?
It does. We've seen the proof in that one recently, with Patchy Mix coming in and Pitbull taking a fight to kind of settle into his UFC tenure, really. And that's the worry that happens to Pico this weekend. I mean, I think when I look at him fight, and you look at him at his best, you look at him performing at his best, you can see where he caused real problems for someone like Lerone Murphy. But it's a big ask for a guy to come in to fight somebody who's on the kind of winning streak he's on and is on the trajectory that he's on in that division. So it's that's probably the biggest question for me coming in here. I think if Aaron Pico is coming in there at the peak of his powers, I think he causes massive, massive problems for Lerone Murphy, who is excellent in everything he does, but does not want to engage in a fight whatsoever. When he does it, he throws to hit you. He doesn't throw to hurt you. There's a complete difference in what it does. I mean, I spar and I train regularly, and one thing I discovered about myself in 15 years, 16 years of training, I don't have the appetite to fuck somebody up that cause like real damage to them. I just don't have it. I'm careful with the people I train with. Now I hit people, I get hit, but I throw to hit. I don't throw to knock people out. Sometimes you catch people a little heavy. I would compare it to, let's say, someone like Leon Edwards, who I found was possibly in this category as well. We've seen Leon at times, and he's really so good technically, and you just want him to do that a little bit more, even when he was on that run to the title. Now, when he had no option left. He had to really commit. And when he did, he was able to knock out Kamaru Usman, and he hasn't really been able to bring himself back to that level again of maybe just going that extra mile. And I think Lerone falls into that category. He can do absolutely anything and everything in the cage, but he wants to get back, and he has that really extra safe guard that he uses, and his lateral movement is great, and he's difficult to nail down. We saw Josh Emmett work so hard to do it. I think Pico can do what Josh Emmett did, but he can just do it better because he's younger, he's quicker, he's more dynamic, and both guys have dynamite in their hands. But I think Pico at his prime, he can absolutely do it just that little bit better than Josh Emmett. You know, he has that higher ceiling as a fighter overall. And I think that's the difference between these two guys. Pico will try to go in there and hurt him. But just for me, is he going to be able to do it as well as he wants to? Or is he going to have to get through one or two fights in the UFC before we see who Aaron Pico really is?
Yeah, Spencer, do you think Murphy kind of falls into the underrated category a little bit, and maybe because he does go to a decision a whole lot? Like, he's an excellent tactical fighter, again, who's undefeated.
I think he's one of these guys that just doesn't inspire the like excitement and the energy that some of his contemporaries in the division do, that even a guy like Aaron Pico does, right? Part of the Pico thing is that we've been hearing about him since he was 16 years old, and he was supposed to be the greatest prospect to ever come into the sport. Opinions vary on whether he's lived up to that or not. I would say not quite yet, but he's still only 28, which blows my mind when I think about it. But Murphy is that guy that just turns up every time, as Paul's saying, and he goes out and he's technically sound. He moves well. He's defensively responsible, and he just beats you. He beats everybody that they've put in front of him thus far. It's been a good run of people as of late. I agree with the comparison for Leon Edwards, even if it feels just a little, you know, it's simple, a pair of British guys that go out and are technical fighters, but it's really who they are. Like, they're just going to come out there and paw at you and pick at you and get out of the way and not get hit. And if they catch you right, like Murphy did against Makwan Amirkhani, then you're going out. But he's very much happy to go out there and beat you over 5 rounds and move and be responsible. And that doesn't get people as fired up as some of the finishes that we see from people that are further behind him in the rankings, but carry a little bit more buzz because they're going out there and putting up highlight reel finishes.
Let's talk about MVP against Jared Cannonier for a second. We'll run through a few more of these fights here. Obviously, MVP similarly came over from Bellator, has gone 2-1 since, losing obviously a close decision to Ian Gary. But look, he looked amazing against Kevin Holland and kind of ran through Sharamagomedov. But he's coming up against a guy here in Jared Cannonier, former heavyweight, who's, you know, obviously he's up at middleweight now as MVP, and Cannonier is down at middleweight where he has been for a while. But I wonder, Spencer, is this like a step different? Now, MVP is a big guy. I was looking back at it today to remember that I remember it right. And I interviewed MVP a while back, and like, I'm almost 6'3", and he towers above me. So he's not a small guy by any means, but a very kind of light guy. And a guy that if Cannonier puts it on him, that it could be very tough for MVP to actually get away from him. Now, I like MVP to kind of run around here and maybe win the decision, but is this a big fight in the career of MVP? Like, because there's a big difference between 3-1 in the UFC and 2-2 in the UFC, Spencer. And a win like this against a known guy like Jared Cannonier in a division like this, could it be a game changer for him in that it puts him in the conversation, maybe around maybe not necessarily the Fluffy the Ritter conversation, but maybe an Adesanya or maybe a Whitaker or something like that?
Those were the names I was going to go to. I think this fight dictates what level of fun fight we get for MVP next. I don't necessarily think this is a guy that anyone, and maybe if you gave him truth serum, he would acknowledge himself that, look, I'm not going on a middleweight title run here. I'm naturally probably best suited for welterweight, but I'm 38, 39 years old. I don't want to be cutting weight, and there's some matchups up here. This makes sense. If he can go out and beat Jared Cannonier, I think it sets up a perfect, fun little fight between him and Izzy. Or if whenever Rob wants to come back, right? Wasn't a bad fight for Rob against Ritter, but comes out on the wrong side of things. It's 2 straight losses now. That's a fun fight. You get a kickboxing match between those two guys that can headline an event in England or in Australia whenever the UFC goes back to either place. If he loses, it sort of reconfigures things. You can still certainly do those matchups. And I think we're at a point with both of those potential opponents and MVP where we all kind of agree and we all accept that we're just going to do some fun fights, right? The one we've wanted this whole time is like, let's just have him fight Wonderboy. That's the one we all want to see. And I don't think any outcome here changes the way we look at him, but it may change a little bit of the calculus for what comes next for him.
Oh, what fight from the rest of the card are you looking forward to? There's some really good stuff there, and a lot of kind of intriguing, very kind of I'll throw one out: Chase Hooper and Alex Hernandez. Like, that to me is a fight that, like, I'm still not fully in belief of the new Chase Hooper, if I'm being honest. Now I think he's really good, but Alex Hernandez, I'm not fully in belief that Alex Hernandez is kind of a bust, maybe, in which he's become over his last few fights. Like, he is so dangerous in the first round, and like, does someone like Chase Hooper have the ability to actually stand up to the onslaught he's going to get from Alexander Hernandez? That, I love that fight. Like, that's the sort of fight you throw that in an undercard for me, and that makes me fucking intrigued. But Paul, which fight are you looking forward to? Sorry if I took your one there, but anything you're looking forward to?
I was about to mention that one, yeah. So I'm scrambling there here to get another one. But the Brian Battle and Nursultan Ruzaboyev one is an absolute banger as well. Both guys on really good runs. Brian Battle, picking up finishes, like 3 or 4 finishes in a sort of a 5-fight unbeaten streak. He's been flying, and Nursultan has the same. The only guy that's beaten him was Joaquin Buckley, wasn't it? And did he go to a 5-round decision on that? He ended up in a main event somewhere. But both guys have been sort of doing very, very well on the outskirts of the rankings. So I'm looking forward to that one. But all in all, I mean, the undercard it has a few of those little sleeper fights. There's so much eyes going on the main event, and the likes of Aaron Pico's debut and whatnot. There are some sneaky ones on there. I think we might be seeing the funeral of Bobby Green. I'm not calling him King Green, sorry. But I think we might be seeing it this weekend. He's God bless him. He's had a rough time of it, hasn't he? 2 first-round stoppages now against really, really high-level opponents, but he looks like he's dropped off the edge of a cliff, and he's in there against a relatively decent guy, a fellow veteran in Ferreira, but I think it's going to be a rough one for Bobby.
Spencer, can I predict the one you're going to say?
Of course, fire away.
Edson Barboza, Drakkar Klose.
I mean, listen, I'm never going to not be excited about an Edson Barboza fight. I spoke to him this morning. He's a guy I've talked to throughout my career. I'm writing the story up before we jumped in here, and I'm just reminded every time I talk to him and I pull up his resume of the ridiculousness of his resume over the last 12 years. I'll give you a sneak peek. The lead of the story is that Edson Barboza has the strongest strength of schedule of anybody that wasn't a champion in UFC history, because it's just insane. And I asked him, like, do you think people forget how good you were at lightweight? Because he was a top 10 lightweight, top 15 lightweight before he decided to go down to featherweight, when we were all like, what do you do? I know you got a couple of losses here, but it's Justin Gaethje and Paul Felder. Like, we're not losing to scrubs. And he said, no, I don't think anybody forgot, but I don't care. I'm just, I'm happy not to cut weight, and I'm fighting another tough guy, and we're going to have fun. And I'm still excited about this. You give me that dude smashing somebody's legs, I'm always in. I mean, we mentioned Chase Hooper. I have a soft spot for him. You said you're not convinced. I'm absolutely convinced. I've been leading the charge for the last 2 years of the lightweight Chase Hooper, because I'm very much somebody that will always advocate for giving, especially these young fighters, so much time. Give them that leash, right? Give them the room to grow. He came into the UFC. He was on Contender Series at 18. He's now 25. So it's 7 years of growth and development and maturation. Like, he's now a grown man. I'm always reminded of what Paddy Pimblett always jokes about, of like, he didn't become a grown man until he was 25, 26, 27. He always makes jokes about, when he first started getting pubes and things like that, but we don't need to get into that. But like, Chase is very much that, right? Like, he was a baby face. You see him now, and he's actually a grown man, and he's a father, and he's matured into his body, and he's physically strong, and we've always seen the toughness. And I think this is a good fight to what you're saying about Alex Hernandez, coming out quick, being a dangerous guy early, that if Chase gets through this, I think we have to start going, okay, this might be real, because he's beating Jim Miller, and Jim Miller isn't going to come out and give you praise if you're just some bum. And he said, look, that kid's really good. He gave me the work in this one. He's really good. I can't wait to see that one. Paul mentioned the Brian Battle, Nursultan Ruzaboyev. That's a main card fight on any fight night show, and it's early prelims this weekend. So I'm with you, Shawnee, from off the top, that this is a great card top to bottom.
Yeah, we've Jeff Neal, Carlos Praches as well, like 2 really hard-hitting guys. I feel like it's got a decision, though. I don't know why, and I think I'm a big fan of. I like Neal, actually.
Somebody's getting lit up in that one. They are both absolutely chomping at the bit to get in there and just bust on each other. Given the way
no one's shooting any takedowns in this fight.
Yeah. No takedowns, no being on the outside and dancing. This is, we're coming into the center, and Jeff Neal's going to do his forward step, back step thing from southpaw, and Carlos Praches is going to be hunting left hands, and it's going to be absolute explosions.
I think Tim Elliott versus Kaya Sakura is probably going to be not a similar fight, but a similar in terms of explosions. I've always been a massive Tim Elliott fight, and Kaya Sakura. I've watched a lot of him over the last few years because some of the opponents he has fought over and risen in other places have been tremendous. So it's great to see as well. Like we've Pico, MVP, Kaya Sakura, all on this card after coming over from other promotions, all in the main card as well, and even like Duplessis after coming from KSW, being a top guy over there. It's great to see, and hopefully there's a few more guys out there with all this money the UFC have now. They're 7.7 billion. They're after getting, maybe Saladin Parnas, maybe even pick up a Will Fleury or a few guys like that. Losin Keita, maybe a few more. Rug even. We'll take Rug. Adrian Lee. There's plenty of lads that they could pick up, but we have a good card this weekend anyway. We're not complaining, and one of the last, how many? I think it's 4 more pay-per-views for the UFC for our American friends. And we're so happy for them over here. They don't have to stay up late. They don't have to pay for it. Yeah, we're not mad at all. But until next time, thank you very much to everybody for tuning in. I'm Sean. That was Spencer and also Paul. And that was this UFC 309 preview show. We'll see you all next time. Good luck.